We have to start with week two in the NFL. And folks, as I mentioned at the top of the show today, we may have had the best week two picking games I've had in the 5 year history of the Brain into World podcast. This is, of course, season 10, our 10 season anniversary, and going 13 and 3 in the money line and 3 for 5 in best bets in week two. When usually in these first couple of weeks, there's a lot of upsets. That's not the case this year. The bad teams may already be bad. The good teams we know are pretty much good. There's only one or two surprises I can really think of here for 2 weeks of the 2025 NFL season. One of them is the Colts are better than I think we all thought. Now, I acknowledge their roster was good. I just had questions about Daniel Jones at quarterback. Daniel Jones seems to be getting back to how Brian Dable was with him during that 2022 season with the Giants. And the other one is the Bears are worse than I thought. Besides that, I mean, the 30 other teams, I'm pretty much getting what I expected to get for the most part. There's a little upsets here and there. And obviously, we're dealing with quarterback injury situations. So we'll get to all that. Again, I think now as we get into week two and week three here coming up on Thursday, it's less about the games themselves. Yes, they matter, but it's more about the storylines going forward for each and every one of these 32 NFL teams. So I'll try to get into that more today. Let's start with Thursday night Commanders at the Packers. I should have bet Green Bay minus 3.5. I was thinking about it. I didn't have the guts to pull the trigger. I did like Green Bay. I thought it was a bad spot for Washington. First road game of the year, short week, Thursday night, going up against Micah Parsons, Rashawn Gary, that Green Bay Packer defense, because short of what was really good, the Packers offense moved the ball. They did what they needed to do. But that defensive line of the Green Bay Packers, it's what's going to propel them far. And again, I thought the Packers coming into the year were underrated without Micah Parsons. Obviously, Micah Parsons adds a different dimension to that defense. And I said, I didn't think the Commanders made huge upgrades on the defense side of the ball in the offseason. Marshawn Lattimore looks cooked. Green Bay did not allow Jaden Daniels to run around, and now Jaden Daniels is dealing with an ankle injury, and sounds like he's going to be out this week when they host the Las Vegas Raiders in a very interesting game between two one-and-one football teams. But overall, I couldn't believe this game was close in the fourth quarter. I thought Green Bay had complete control throughout. And through 2 weeks, the Packers look like the kings of the NFL. But again, it's early, it's September, but they look really good. They look buttoned up, and they look like they're picking off right where they left off a year ago. Now, I did pick the Ravens to win. I did have the Browns covering. That was embarrassing. Everybody in Cleveland's trying to fire Andrew Berry, the general manager. Obviously, Kevin Stefanski has been a scapegoat among the fan base here in my hometown of Cleveland. I don't get it. I think Stefanski is just as much to blame. Again, he went 3 and 14 last season. He starts off 0 and 2 this year. Last year, the 2 years ago, they started off terrible before Joe Flacco came in and saved the day. And the fact the Browns fans are trying to defend Joe Flacco is pathetic. He's pathetic. I said he wasn't going to be the answer. He's not the answer. Dylan Gabriel got in there in garbage time. It's only a matter of time until Dylan Gabriel gets in there. And then, in my opinion, even though he is the third emergency quarterback, it's only a matter of time until Shedeur Sanders gets in there. He should have been the backup from the start to me behind Flacco. Actually, as you guys know, I would have started Shedeur Sanders, but again, I'm not the coach. Myles Garrett gets his couple sacks. Whoop-de-doo. The Browns controlled Derrick Henry. Like, their defense played really well. Mason Graham looks like a legitimate player, the number 5 overall pick, the defensive tackle out of Michigan. But when you're throwing the football 1 yard down the field to Dylan Sampson, Quinyon Junkins, and Harold Fannin, who, by the way, are all rookies, the Browns got some talent. I mean, they drafted both running backs. They drafted the tight end out of Bowling Green. They need to find a way to get David Njoku and Jerry Jeudy the ball more. I mean, They're not completely handicapped or weapons like the New England Patriots have been the last couple of years, even though they don't have a lot of weapons. But that was an ugly performance. Lamar Jackson does what he does. The Ravens bounce back. The Browns fought hard. There was a 17-3 game, and then there was a blocked punt by the Ravens, and there was a fumble by Flacco at one point when it was, I believe, 24-10 or something like that, which their one touchdown when Flacco was in the game came off a deflection of Marlon Humphrey right into the arms of Cedric Tillman. But that was embarrassing for the Browns offense, and they looked like they did not belong on the field. Okay, the Steelers, this game was close against Seattle, and then obviously the special teams blunder happened because the Steelers did not know the rule of if the ball lands in the landing zone, it's a live ball, you got to go get it. And then the wheels just started to fall up Pittsburgh, and Seattle went in there. And I was really impressed by what Seattle did. You can make an argument if it wasn't for Nick Bosa making a play in week one, they could be 2-0 against the Niners and the Steelers. I thought DK Metcalf was going to have a lot bigger game than he did. I mean, he did have a touchdown, obviously, but only 30 yards receiving. And Aaron Rodgers, we talked about how well he played week one against the Jets. Is the Jets defense under Aaron Glenn? And we saw year one with the Lions. It took a year, obviously for Aaron Glenn to get that defense right. Um, is the Jets defense just bad? And I think that that's the question that we have to ask right now because they got shredded by Buffalo. And Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers did not look good. They could not protect Aaron Rodgers. They could not throw the football down the field. They have a very interesting game coming up week three at the New England Patriots. Next game, I did like Cincinnati. They did get the win. This was a wild back and forth game. Travis Hunter, a pass interference on fourth down, kept the drive alive for Jake Browning, who came in the second quarter after Joe Burrow got crushed. Joe Burrow now has turf toe. He's going to be out at least 3 months. There's rumors floating around that the Bengals are going after a guy like Jameis Winston. I'm a little bit shocked they don't go after a guy like Kirk Cousins because the Bengals, like I said they would to start the year, they are 2-0. And they knew it was important to get off to a 2-0 start because they usually start 0-2. The problem is when they're 0-2, they usually have Joe Burrow. Now they're not going to. And Jake Browning did play well 2 years ago when he filled in for Burrow when Burrow had that weird arm and shoulder injury. And Cincinnati did finish 9-8 that year as well. Browning did throw 3 interceptions. Now they host the Vikings at home, who are going to be without J.J. McCarthy, and Carson Wentz is going to be starting. So you have Carson Wentz versus Jake Browning in a game we thought it was going to be J.J. McCarthy versus Joe Burrow. So that's why preseason predictions pretty much mean absolutely nothing. Jamar Chase had a big game, even with Jake Browning back there. He got back on track. I think Jake Browning is smart. I think he delivers an accurate ball. I think he gets the ball out quick. The Bengals defense, led by new defensive coordinator Al Golden, are creating turnovers. They got a great interception in the back of the end zone. It was 7-0 Jacksonville that were going in again, and a nice interception, I believe, by Cam Britt of Cincinnati to, keep that game within striking distance. Trevor Lawrence looks really good under Liam Cohen. I know he threw that one high ball, and there's that clip going around of Liam Cohen, patting his chest, saying, throw that in the chest. I don't think that's a concern right now for Jacksonville with Trevor Lawrence. They host the Texans in week three. Now a desperate Houston team at 0-2. So I think Trevor Lawrence has played well. I think the Colts have played well. And all of a sudden, that AFC South division may be better than we all thought it was. Cincinnati at 2-0. We'll see again who they get as a backup. I'm not ready to say their season's completely over yet. I think it depends on how Jake Browning plays in the next couple weeks. Again, they have the likes of Minnesota, Green Bay, Detroit coming up on their schedule. I thought this was the most brutal part of their schedule, anyways, with Joe Burrow, and I had them going 2-4 after starting 2-0. So if they do that, I'm not going to lose hope in this Cincinnati team. Then the Rams, they were my survivor pick this week. They beat Tennessee. They easily covered the 5.5. We know Cam Ward had a crazy touchdown, yes. Completion percentage obviously needs to come up as he is playing a lot of backyard football right now, but he does look good, in spurts. He is making some crazy throws. He does not look like he's rattled by pressure yet. But I think it's going to be a long year for this Tennessee Titan team with no receivers to help him out really legitimately and no offensive line. Cam Ward's going to be running for his life. They played good for a half the way they did against Denver last week. The Rams are just too talented. Brandon Fitzgerald versus that defensive line really took over the game. Puka Nakua had his typical stats, but Matthew Stafford played pretty well. And yeah, the Rams just took care of business as they are better than the Tennessee Titans. Then I said I was considering the Jets plus 6.5. I'm glad I didn't. I'm glad I didn't get fooled by Justin Fields because he did leave the game. Sounds like he may have a concussion. Sounds like he may not play week 3. But this Buffalo team absolutely took them apart. And again, you're concerned after they played that highly emotional game, 41-40 against the Ravens. Everybody was going all out, 6 days to rest. Jets looked very good against Pittsburgh, motivated following a loss. It was their second straight game at home to begin the year. And Justin Fields looked like he didn't belong from the beginning, and James Cook ran all over the place. Josh Allen made some plays, and Buffalo took out the Jets, and the Ravens took out the Browns, and those two teams took care of business. And now, with Buffalo being up 2 games on the Kansas City Chiefs, if these two teams do meet in the postseason again, especially if Buffalo were to beat Kansas City in the regular season, that postseason game would be in Buffalo. Then Patriots Dolphins was crazy. New England got off to the fast start. Miami came back. There was the punt return for a touchdown, followed up by the kick return touchdown from Antonio Gibson. I did pick the Dolphins. I don't know why I picked the Dolphins. I should have picked New England. That was the worst pick I had of the weekend. Don't ask me why. I just felt like, we'll see how good New England really is. I still don't feel good about New England. Drake May had a nice touchdown in the back of the end zone to Keyshawn Boutte and another touchdown to Mac Hollins. I'm surprised they're not using Travion Anderson more to the backfield. They're really using Ramondre Stevenson, not only as a runner, but as catching back. And Tua looked like he got his swag back. I mean, Miami, they put up 3 straight scoring drives and they got back in the game. But then the New England defense, led by free agent Milton Williams, the former Philadelphia Eagle, made the plays when it mattered most. And the Patriots, they outwitted the Dolphins 33-27. New England is 1-1, and with Miami and the Jets at 0-2, Buffalo at 2-0, New England not looking great. Now they got to play Pittsburgh next week at home, which is a very interesting game. We'll see how Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers bounce back. All this game really showed to me is that Buffalo is in a commanding position in the AFC East. And yes, they play the Dolphins in week 3, and I think Mike McDaniel in Miami is very close to being fired. And as I predicted before the year, this will be the last year of the Tua Chris Greer Mike McDaniel regime. Now, the Bears were embarrassed by the Lions. I thought they were going to come out playing a lot better. The Lions were favored by 5.5, and this game was close early. Both teams scored on their opening drive. But I think Dan Campbell, new offensive coordinator John Morton, new defensive coordinator Calvin Shepard, I think they were embarrassed. We said they were embarrassed week 1 by the Green Bay Packers. They were tired of hearing that, oh my God, they missed Ben Johnson, they missed Aaron Glenn. I think they made a statement here in week 2, taking apart Ben Johnson, who got booed massively, by the way, a little bit of a surprise to me because of what he did for the Detroit Lions. I guess fans are mad that he left prior to the game. Caleb Williams had a couple bad interceptions. We saw them. Or if you didn't, because the NFL now decides that they don't need to show highlights on Fox and CBS. They don't need to show stats on the bottom. They don't need to show scores on the bottom during games. Really annoying to me. But Jared Goff only had 5 incompletions. He looked very comfortable. He looked like Jared Goff from a year ago. Again, in a dome, indoors, fast track, comfortable. Jared Goff on certain days can be one of the best quarterbacks in football, and that's what we saw with this Lions offense. They were an absolute machine. And the last five quarters, starting in the fourth quarter against the Vikings, two divisional opponents, now they're 0-2 in the division. The story to me isn't even about Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson. It's about new defensive coordinator Dennis Allen and that Bears defense refusing to get a stop. Dennis Allen, yes, he was a terrible head coach with the Saints, but while he was there and even with the Raiders, he has been known as one of the best defensive coordinators in football, even if he isn't a great head coach. And that Bears defense looks lost. They got absolutely destroyed. And now they take on a desperate Dallas Cowboy team. 0-2 Bears. They need the win. You know, if they can beat the Cowboys and Raiders the next 2 weeks, they'll save their season. Detroit has a very tough game Monday night going to Baltimore. Speaking of the Dallas Cowboys, the Giants played great. I mean, all afternoon, it looked like they were going to upset the Cowboys. Russell Wilson at 450 yards. He staves off that Jackson Dart conversation for at least one more week. Malik Neighbors made an incredible touchdown pass to give the Giants a 40-point lead with about 30 seconds left. And Brandon Aubrey hit a 64-yard field goal. And then Brandon Aubrey hit another field goal as time expired. And the Dallas Cowboys are 1-1. Listen, the Cowboys defense is leaking oil. They just signed Jadeveon Clowney to try to make up for the loss of Micah Parsons because Kenny Clark is not doing it. They cannot stop the Eagles until the rain delay Thursday night. They cannot stop a bad Giants offense on Sunday. The good news is with Brian Schottenheimer as a play caller and head coach, the Cowboys offense is using more motion than they did under Mike McCarthy. They look more creative. They're getting the ball in the hands of Javonte Turbin a lot, which I did not suspect coming into the season. Dak Prescott, coming off his really bad leg injury, looks really comfortable. But at the end of the day, the Cowboys are 1-1, and I think this is where the reality starts setting in. Sunday at Chicago, they're in a bad spot. Remember last year at home, week 3, they took on an 0-2 pissed off Ravens team? I think they're taking on an 0-2 pissed off Bears team this coming Sunday. And for the Giants, you want to talk about a game they needed the win to save Brian Dable's job. Well, now their home opener, believe it or not, is Sunday Night Football against the 0-2 Kansas City Chiefs, who we'll get to. Mac Jones and Spencer Rattler both played well. Listen, nobody watched this game. Niners won. They covered. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on Niners Saints because Mac Jones and the Niners, and they're without George Kittle as well. And yes, they won the game, but I don't think San Francisco is going to be as good as people think this year. The Saints were in that game for a lot of it. Kellen Moore's doing what he can with the personnel he has, but at the end of the day, we know the Saints are a bad football team. There was 9 games in the 1 o'clock window. Seahawks Steelers was cast at the end. Jacksonville Cincinnati cast at the end. Dallas New York obviously cast at the end. And the Niners Saints even came down to a first down by San Francisco at the end by Christian McCaffrey. So Arizona did what they were supposed to do. And as a reminder for my best bet, I did take Arizona -6.5 against Carolina. I already said I did take the Browns plus 11.5 against Baltimore. Both of those did not hit. Those were the two bets that did not hit on my board. Arizona should have hit, and they tried to give up the lead. Bryce Young looked like he regressed back to week, 1 through 2. Bryce Young last year before he got benched for Andy Dalton. And then in the second half, when Carolina was already down 27-3 and they started to go more tempo, that's when Bryce Young looked at the quarterback he looked like at the end of last year. So maybe that's the change for Carolina. They have a new rookie receiver in Ted McMillan. They still need to get going. I thought he was going to change that offense to go with Xavier Legette. So far, he did not do that. So listen, we'll see here about Bryce Young. Maybe he's not the answer. Dave Canal is trying to do whatever he can. Arizona almost blew the lead. There was some weird pass interference and roughing the passer penalties at the end of the game. But bottom line here is this. The Arizona Cardinals, yes, they defeated two bad teams in the NFC South and the Saints and Panthers, but they were supposed to do that. And they're 2-0. Now they take on their rival San Francisco in week 3. But the Niners are going to be without George Kittle and Mac Jones, while the Rams go to Philadelphia to take on the reigning defending Super Bowl champions. There is a real chance here that Arizona starts the season in first place in the NFC West at 3-0. And my prediction that the Cardinals are going to be one of the most improved teams in football this year, even without a massive breakout yet from Marvin Harrison, looks to be true. The defense, up until that fourth quarter against Carolina, has played great this year so far under Jonathan Gannon. Maybe again, it was just the fact that Arizona want their foot off the gas, but we'll see moving forward. Carolina and Atlanta, an interesting division game going into week 3. Then, obviously, the leverage penalty screwed Denver as Indianapolis came back and won that game. I like the Colts in an upset. I said I didn't take the guts to take them plus 2.5, though I should have. By the way, if that field goal would have counted, um, or would have not counted, Denver would have won the game by 1. So Indy would have still covered the 2.5. But Daniel Jones, Jonathan Taylor, Michael Pittman, Tyler Warren, who I think has put a huge impact to that offense, the rookie tight end out of Penn State, they were moving the football up and down the field on that Denver defense, that as Browning, the rookie out of Texas, that as Patrick Surtain, that as Zach Allen up front. There was a top three scoring defense last year under Vance Joseph. And Bo Nix for a terrible interception that got the Colts back in the game. And again, a healthy offensive line. We talked about it there, led by Quinn Nelson. But I said going into the year, I like the Colts offensive pieces. I like their offensive line. I like the offensive coach and Shane Steichen. The biggest question I had for the Indianapolis Colts was if Daniel Jones was going to have enough time, was going to throw the football, was going to be accurate and not turn the football over. To this point, he has. And the Colts and Jaguars have easily looked like the two best teams in the AFC South who could be battling for the division going into the last part of the year. Now, Super Bowl rematch. Eagles obviously win the game 20-17. I picked Philly to cover -1.5. They did so. Outside of the interception by Ndike, the rookie safety that turned the game around off the hands of Travis Kelce. Obviously, the biggest storyline of the game is not even the fact that Jalen Hurts barely threw for 100 yards, that it was a defensive battle, that Patrick Mahomes does not have his receivers yet, and Xavier Worthy and Rashid Rice. That could be a reason why the Chiefs start 0-2, though I'm not concerned yet about Kansas City. Obviously, the biggest story of the game was the brotherly shove. And the Eagles clearly jumped on a false start twice the referees did not call. They clearly were off sides on at least one of the attempts. You could clearly see it. And Dean Blandino was over the air basically saying he's done with the brotherly shove to ban it, that it's way too hard to officiate. And my takeaway on the play as an Eagles fan has obviously always been that the Eagles do it better than anyone else. Don't ban it. And I still believe that. I mean, Buffalo has tried it. You saw it against Baltimore. They did not succeed against it. They always run left. Nobody knows how to run the play as successful as the Philadelphia Eagles do. With that being said, Sunday was the first time, and maybe they're doing this. And I know obviously the play is sponsored by Dude Wipes now, so you know the Eagles are trying to do everything to get revenue and get everything out of this play when the NFL eventually bans it next year. And maybe that's part of it is, hey, we know they're banning it next year. Let's try to, get every possible advantage we can. I don't know. But I think this Eagles Chiefs game will be the game that officially does ban the brotherly shove next year. As much as I hate to say it, as much as I laugh about it, as much as I love the play, I think it's a cheat code for my team because we know how to run it better than anybody else. And as much as the Eagles' passing game has struggled for the first 2 weeks, they are 2-0 against their arch rival Cowboys, against their new arch rival in the Kansas City Chiefs. Now they have the Rams and Bucks, two other playoff teams up next. as well as Denver at home, who many people and some people think are going to win the AFC West this year. That's a brutal 5 game stretch to start the year. And to me now, Philadelphia, if they beat the Rams, I think they're possibly going to lose to Tampa. But starting off 3-2 or 4-1 in this stretch to me would be a win, especially 4-1. 5-0, I'd obviously be over the moon. And I remind people that last year, week 3, the 2-0 Saints, who were lighting the NFL on fire after absolutely destroying the Panthers and Cowboys, were taking on a 1-1 Eagles team that just lost a bad home game to the Atlanta Falcons, and they were without A.J. Brown and they were without Devontae Smith. And it was 3-0 Saints in the fourth quarter of that game. And Dallas Goedert being out of this game here against Kansas City, I think, is a real impact because of what he does, not only the passing and the running game for my team. So there's injuries galore all over the place for both sides here. This was more like what I thought the Super Bowl was going to be, like a defensive battle. One play made by the Eagles defense. Obviously, the big catch down the field by Devontae Smith really turned the game. Then I liked Atlanta plus 4.5. Now I liked Minnesota in the money line. That was my other miss in terms of picking games this weekend. But the Vikings could not block. And Javon Walker and James Pierce, we all killed Atlanta for giving them a first round pick in next year's draft to go get an edge rusher this year. But the Falcons, who could not rush the passer really since they blew that 28-3 lead in Super Bowl 51 against the Patriots, for the first time in 9 years, it feels like they can rush the passer. And they got all after a Vikings offensive line that was obviously banged up. They were missing Darius on the left tackle. They were missing the center, Ryan Kelly. And J.J. McCarthy, who, as I mentioned earlier, is dealing with an ankle injury now. He is not going to play, it sounds like, against the Bengals, and it will be Carson Wentz. He missed some throws open, and he had some bad interceptions. But I think that was a product of just, again, this Atlanta defensive line getting after Minnesota. And on the Falcons' offensive side, Michael Penix did not want Minnesota to get a hand on him because he got the ball out so quick. And I said I was excited to watch this game because I wanted to see these two quarterbacks who played against each other a couple years ago in college in the national championship game go up against each other, prime time standalone window. And Michael Penix impressed me. You guys know I'm not the biggest fan of left-handed quarterbacks, but Michael Penix looks like Michael Vick in a Falcons uniform, doesn't he? He's got mobility, he's got power, he gets the ball out quick, he doesn't take a lot of sacks, and they're finally starting to use Kyle Pitts and Bijan Robinson to their full potential, which Atlanta is 1-1. You can make an argument if they beat Tampa, they should be 2-0. Tampa's got the Jets coming up, which that should be a win down in Tampa. But Atlanta's got Carolina, always a tricky divisional game. But right now it does look like it's the Falcons and Bucks competing for the NFC South title. Speaking of Tampa, I said, and I know it took a game-winning drive by Baker Mayfield, and the Texans, I don't know what to make of him because C.J. Stroud still does not look the same from his rookie year. But I thought the Tampa defensive line was going to win the Bucks this game. And really, if you think about it, the stop of that 2-point conversion is really what did it because Nick Chubb scored, and you can make an argument Houston scored too quickly. But I thought Tampa was the better team going into it. I bet them plus 2.5, and we got the dub. It was a 1-point win for the Bucks, but they are 2-0. The Texans are 0-2. And then the Chargers. Listen, I said coming back from Brazil, we saw the way the Eagles and Packers both played last year coming back from Brazil. How were the Chargers going to play against the Raiders, who Ashton Jeanty and Brock Bowers are two very special talents on offense, but without an offensive line blocking and Geno Smith being very inaccurate besides passes to Jacoby Myers, even at 10 p.m. Eastern of a start time, you could just tell that Jesse Minter of the Chargers defense is humming, man. They were the number one scoring defense in the NFL last year. They look like they're on pace to do it again this year. And Justin Herbert, with Greg Roman as his offensive coordinator this year, is doing really good. As protection, even without Rashawn Slater, Joe Alt seamlessly moving from right to left tackle where he played at in college. And the Chargers look like a very good football team, man. They look like one of the best teams in football in September early on. And if they beat the Denver Broncos, which I believe that game is going to be in LA next week, if they go to 3-0 and they're 3-0 in the division, the Chargers are well on their way to winning the AFC West. So to recap, again, we went 13-3 in the money line in picks. My misses in picks were Pittsburgh, Miami, and Minnesota. We did go 3 for 5 in best bets. We did hit on the Eagles -1.5 against Kansas City, Atlanta +4.5 against Minnesota, and Tampa +2.5 against Houston. Missing on Cleveland with the points against Baltimore, and then Arizona did not cover. They had the cover in hand. It should have been a 4 out of 5 week, but they went up the lead against the Carolina Panthers. Through 2 weeks in the money line, we're 22-10. I will easily take that. As I mentioned, sometimes I'm 500 for the first 3 weeks of the season, trying to figure out the haves and the have-nots. And 6 out of 10 in best bets, 3 out of 5 both weeks, winning weeks so far. We're on pace for that 60% best bets percentage. Thursday, I'll give away my picks for week 3. Spoiler alert. If you're 0-2 and I think you're a good team and you're desperate, I think you'll win. I like the Ravens in a really good matchup against the Lions Monday night. I like the Texans against Jacksonville, and I like Chicago against Dallas. I'll have to check the lines to see if there's better lines out there, but those are my 3 favorite picks so far. Like that clip from the Friends World podcast? If so, make sure you go down there and hit that subscribe button. While you're down there hitting the subscribe button, make sure to also hit the notification bell so you never miss another upload. And make sure you check out all the other clips from the Friends World podcast right here on YouTube.